Hi everyone, thanks for your patience in getting this set up. I was going to say welcome, but it's a little awkward to say that since I'm over 8,000 kilometers away in Seattle. So maybe I'll just say welcome to our long distance experiment today. As I said, my name is Darryl Duke. I'm one of the founders of Stepstone Technologies. We're certified Atlassian experts, and we make the product called Zen Foundation. And today we're going to talk about, and next slide please, is how Atlassian is using Confluence and Zen to meet marketing and branding standards and extend the reach of Confluence outside the organization, which is a complete mouthful, so next slide. We prefer to say how to kick asterisks with Confluence. And hopefully you guys are seeing the donkey on the screen there at this time. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so first a little bit of background. Again, my name is Darryl. I'm one of the founders of Stepstone. And we're based in Seattle. And as you can see, we were founded sometime in the last century. And next slide, please. But more importantly, we discovered Atlassian in 2005 and immediately partnered with them and have been in the Atlassian's Experts program and Partners program ever since. Now, we're kind of an odd Atlassian pairing because our focus is what we like to call the rest of the organization. So where Atlassian aims at the development teams and making happy nerds, we work with everyone else. So naturally, it was easier for us to have a more Confluence-specific focus. And from the beginning of our relationship, we've been doing things like simplifying and skinning and doing integrations for primarily non-technical user communities. Okay, next slide. Okay, we all know the benefits of Confluence. It centralizes knowledge, it's social, it's got a great editor, powerful search, there's a vibrant plugins community, and about a bazillion other great features, all of which we think gives Confluence virtually unlimited flexibility, which is a lot like this guy. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we like to say that Confluence has unlimited application. And why is that? It's because Atlassian's sweet spot is the development teams. So in order to be successful in that market, they had to make Confluence super powerful. And so it's become the Swiss Army knife to end all Swiss Army knives. And since you can practically do anything with Confluence, we believe everyone should be using it both inside and outside the organization. Next slide. But, of course, there's a snag, and that comes when you try to push Confluence outside of the development teams. And this is a familiar story, right? How many of you have looked around your organizations and seen people emailing Word documents around, like it was 1999 or something, and said, come on, you people, stop that. You should be using Confluence. This is a much better solution. And for your concern and efforts, you get punched in the nose for that. And that's because to the non-technical user, Confluence can seem hard or unfamiliar or too complicated or not pretty enough, or my favorite criticisms, ironically, that Confluence is too powerful or too flexible. Right? And then you have kind of the worst case scenario where you get into a battle against a prettier but more lame and less powerful wiki, and oftentimes lose because the person who's paying the bill it's easier for them to like something that looks nice and they can understand. All of this we call user adoption challenges. Okay, next slide. So the question is what has this got to do with Atlassian? So, they have a development team focus, so they have dev team users primarily, so Confluence should be just fine, right? Well, it turns out that large groups of people, or infrequent technical users, no matter how technical they are, they behave exactly the same thing as non-technical users. And Atlassian is facing this because their market is growing so fast that at any given time, they have a large group of potential customers who are unfamiliar with their products and their company that are evaluating them. Okay, and meanwhile, web standards keep climbing higher. Things are getting shinier, simpler, more attractive. Now, Atlassian, of course, gets this, and they just rebranded last year, as you've seen from their websites and such, but not all their web presences are projecting this new brand. Okay, so about this time, you guys are probably saying, why do we care about this? We're technical people. Why is this important? And it is important to us because we are busy people, and we all know that we need to be investing our time in lasting technologies, because we know that the best technologies don't always win in the marketplace. And of course, Atlassian knows that they risk sending us the wrong message, because they know that bad marketing today can mean gone tomorrow. Okay, next slide. Okay, like I said, Atlassian is facing the same issues with their Confluence web presences, and why is that? Well, one reason is that they vigorously follow a practice called dog fooding, and that's a practice that says, if I refuse to eat it, how can I justify feeding it to my customers? Now, this is great because it's a simple and effective quality assurance practice, because automated tests only get you so far. You need to get real-world action on your product before shipping it. And another reason is that Confluence lacks these branding and simplifying features for good reason. They don't want to compromise Confluence's appropriateness for the dev teams, the power users. And this is a constant choice and the subject of ongoing debate as to where to draw that line. But the basic thing is that we're kind of stuck, because while dog fooding may be great for bonding with your existing customers, the challenge is how to avoid smearing dog food on your future customers. Now, that's American dog food. I'm sorry about this. It looks disgusting. I hope German dog food isn't quite so bad as this. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so to recap, the challenge is how can Atlassian keep using Confluence and thereby demonstrate it's such a great tool, yet do it in a way that's simple and pretty and branded? Well, it's Confluence, so of course there's a solution. And to do this, Atlassian chose Zen Foundation. So let's take a look at some sites and see how that turned out. Next slide. So the first example we'll look at, you probably all have seen, the developer.atlassian.com site, or DAC, developer documentation. Now, somewhat ironically in this presentation, this is definitely aimed at development teams, which is exactly the people I said we weren't targeting. But the key here is that the site is very, very complex. It presents multiple products and versions. It has to absorb a bunch of auto-generated content for all those APIs. It's getting very complicated for the folks to maintain and use. So this even got started before Atlassian went on their rebranding initiative. The DAC team knew that they needed to make the site better for everybody, including themselves. Okay, next slide. So this is a screenshot of the original site using the standard Confluence documentation theme. As you can see, it's not meeting any kind of branding guidelines or standards. It's a classic Confluence presentation, so it's functional, but it has no frills. And still, the doc team had to jump through quite a few hoops for layouts, etc. Next slide. So they came up with a great design, and then they asked us to build it with Zen. So here's a look at the landing page, which I'm sure you've all seen. This is a big improvement, and it feels much simpler to use. Next slide. Okay, next is a shot of a simple and non-intimidating way to search and navigate all the products and their versions. Okay, next slide. And then here's a basic page layout example. This is, we think it's obvious, attractive, and non-intimidating. And all of these are great concepts when thinking about training and user adoption. Okay, next slide. So in the end, the result was that it's easy for users to stay oriented. We were able to transform complex material into a simple user experience. It looks great. And because Zen handles the branding and the navigation and the page layouts separately from the content, it's a whole lot easier to maintain for the DAC team. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, next up is the OG site for you guys, the users group piece. I don't know if many of you have got a chance to meet Brittany Walker from the San Francisco office at any point. She's the OG master. But she wanted to improve the web support for all of these groups and to resolve the problem that we have between using Confluence and Meetup and Facebook and other tools. And also find ways to automate and integrate the rest of her OG management. And of course, Confluence is a great platform to build on. And of course, there's over 110 OGs now to facilitate, so we knew that Brittany's very sanity was at stake, so that was good motivation. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, here's just a quick look at a screenshot of from a little while ago of the old OG, or the current OG now, I guess. You can see it's got some branding, but it's not nearly as slick as the new Atlassian.com makeover. And that's a little bit older. There's like 110 now slides, or OGs now. It's quite a bit. Next slide, please. So, we built a brand using Zen to mimic the new Atlassian site exactly. So, and then once we did that, it was just a matter of shaping the existing content, adding a few graphics, and then using the built-in design tools. So now that new OG site is going to have a richness that matches the community that it serves. Next slide, please. Here's another shot. I like this one because it shows how Mike Cannon-Brooks truly puts the A in Atlassian. Okay, next slide. Here's a page where we have all the regions and user groups organized. And we did this using Zen's point-and-click tools to visually manage complex content and give the appearance of simplicity. And this makes it both easy to manage and consume. Okay, next slide, please. This last example is where we eliminated a page of complex navigation by using design. So where we pulled together several pages into one resources dashboard. And of course, it's all seamless with Atlassian's gorgeous new brand, so good for the marketing folks. Okay, next slide. Okay, just to sum up, this is, I think, a great example of using design not to dumb things down, but to reduce the apparent complexity of a site. And of course, the new design respects the community by reflecting quality, and it shows that Atlassian cares a great deal about the OGs. And of course, it's easier on Brittany, and if you've met her and worked with the OGs setup much at all, you know that Brittany's happiness translates directly into more beer for the rest of us. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, the next example is a new site that was launched a few months ago called pressbox.atlassian.com. This is a live site you can look at today. And here's where the press team in San Francisco is using Confluence to respond quickly to media and analysts. Now, this is my favorite use case for Confluence, private collaboration with external customers and partners. And as you guys know, Confluence's permissions model makes it perfect for this kind of thing. But the downside is that Confluence out of the box doesn't look nice enough for most marketing departments to approve that kind of thing. Okay, next slide. So again, this is a look at it. It's fully branded to match the new Atlassian.com. Now this is a publicly viewable space that contains just press relevant content for Atlassian. Now, because I'm an admin in this screenshot, I'm seeing everything. So at the top you see the press box and analysts and media. But if you weren't logged in, you'd just see the press box and a login link in the menu. The others are eliminated by Zen's restrict macro. So when an analyst or media comes in, they'll see their spaces, and those are areas where, like say the analysts, where the press team can share information that they're not quite ready to make public, but can share that with a category of visitors. And then finally, that My Portal link is drawn by another Zen macro that takes the user to whatever portal space they have access to, if there is one, or it disappears. So we can build one menu that works for all visitors, and it progressively shows the right components as well as takes them to where they need to go. Okay, next slide, please. Here's another page just showing more complex menus in the header. Again, we're just using the same great design to polish up the presentation of very simple content and get good strong navigation. Next slide. And here's an example of those private collaboration spaces I was talking about. Here's a place where the Gartner Group analysts can log in and get the information from the press team that they've requested. And then by using Confluence, they get the advantage of things like shares and at mentions, so that the press team can keep conversations and exchanges from getting lost or buried in someone's email box, and draw those people in to demonstrate the power and the features that they're trying to educate them about when they're writing. So we think that's kind of fun. Okay, next slide, please. And this is a brand new site that was just launched last week. It's aimed at helping users migrate to DVCS. Now, the team in Sydney wanted to provide an attractive site that both projects the Atlassian brand, but more importantly, makes it super easy for people to make the leap to distributed version control. And by the way, you guys, if you haven't done so yet, if you haven't been on DVCS, you're not going to believe how much better life will be when you do get onto it. So seriously consider making that leap. Okay, next slide. Now here's some early mock-ups of the site. The new site's actually even better than this, so please go check it out. But as you can see, this homepage has really easy navigation. It's simple and it's uncluttered, all of which makes it obvious for the user what to do, and none of which is possible without good design elements. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is just drilling down into one of the supporting pages. Again, it's attractive and simple. And here we're showing off the complex footer capability of Zen. Now, footers and headers and menus and master page layouts and things can be set to apply site-wide or just for specific spaces, and in many cases on individual pages. Okay, next slide. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is look at some really short videos that demonstrate a couple of things that are hard to present in screenshots. And to try to keep the presentation short, these are just really fast snips of the interesting parts. So it goes pretty fast, so don't blink or you'll miss a lot of it. Okay, next slide, please, and then it's just going to run on its own. Okay, so here's a quick tour of some screenshots, first of all, that give you an idea of Zen's flexibility, just how good Confluence can look with good design. Okay, now all of these screenshots that you've seen can be built using Zen's new brand designer, which is a wizard that's right in Confluence. It can handle logos and color palettes and manage images. You can use it to do things like create gradients. And what's really a huge time saver is it actually regenerates all of Zen icons using your chosen colors. And hit the next slide button, please. So here we can see Zen updating icons with the color change in real time. There's over 70 or so icons in Zen. So this kind of thing really saves hours and hours and hours for your graphic designer. And of course makes the whole site look integrated with your brand when you're done. Okay, next slide. And with Zen you can keep going and zero in on all the elements of the UI. There's panels to design each one. You can even add your own CSS and JavaScript if you want to get at something that the brand designer can't reach. Next slide. And because designing is all about experimenting and trying things out, there's an unlimited undo redo stack built right in. It's kind of tough to see what's happening, but as we're hitting the Control Z key, the design changes are being backed out and the images are all being regenerated on the fly. Okay, so that's a quick look at the designer. What about designing page layouts? Next slide, please. Page layouts are even easier. You can just drag sections where you want to, and then Zen figures out how many columns you need. So here we're going from a 2-column layout to a 3-column layout, and then back to a 2-column, but now on the other side. There's no coding, of course, involved for the user. You just do it. Okay, next slide, please. Now the same goes for column and page sizing, too. The idea is to make it intuitive and make it as natural as just falling off a bike. Okay, well what about editing this mess? Let's hit the next slide. It's pretty complicated pages, but Zen lets you not care. Every section gets its own pencil so that you can zero in and focus on just the content that you need to and forget about the rest. Okay, next slide. And here we can drill into this to design the individual sections as well. We can set borders, backgrounds, margins, padding, sizing, floating, pretty much everything we can do in design we do right here in the section designer. Okay, next slide, please. Now, of course, Zen has menus and navigation, and menus in Zen are just really simple to create. They're just Confluence pages with bullet lists of links. The nested bullets create pull downs, and the next levels create slide off menus. Pretty straightforward. And of course, since they're just pages, Confluence page restrictions mean your menus can be open or locked down as you need them to be. Okay, next slide, please. So Zen also has a concept of master page layouts to make your site consistent. And these layouts can include toggles so that you can control the display of common elements like labels and comments. And there's a draft and publishing feature as well so that you can make updates to your live site without a staging server, as well as doing experimenting. They have a bunch of design macros and permissions control and search engine optimization and automatic page numbering and so forth, so lots of features. Okay, next slide, please. So in the end, the idea behind adding Zen to Confluence is quite simple. If we can extend the reach of Confluence to everybody by making it easy for graphic designers and not just Java and Velocity coders, if we can make it fun for the casual users and not just the uber wiki Jedi users, if we can turn the ultimate content management tool, which is Confluence, into the ultimate branding and web presence tool and make it simple, then we can get everybody collaborating, both inside and outside of the organization. And after all, isn't that why we got a wiki in the first place? Next slide, and thanks very much, guys.
We can probably ask questions, and if you hear them, you can answer them. Thanks a lot for the great presentation.
Thanks for listening. And then just to warn you guys, I'm an American, so I only speak small English words.
So, questions?
Where's the mic? Yeah, where are you? Okay.
Here, if you sit back, I can't see you.
Hey, how are you doing? So Zen is really great. Was just wondering, why don't you have any icons in the menus? So there's a lot of text, and when I see a page, so there's a logo for Atlassian, but for each menu like download or whatever, there's no icon. Is there any reason for that, or is it some technical restriction, or?
You could put because each menu item, a link, a bullet list, and a link. So you could add icons. We've done that in some designs where we've added icons to those menu items, and so that displays in there. The menu is just a bullet Confluence link, so you can add icons as part of that.
Okay. Yeah, for me it's important. So like to have a visual guide for something. Reading is really exhausting. Okay, thank you.
Well, maybe make some designs that make that a little bit more obvious, because I think that's a great idea.
Other questions? I would have one. You have lots of experience with big conference sites, probably. Is there any problem with performance on if you're doing large sites with Confluence? Was it an issue with, that you found when you introduced your layouts?
It's a great question. I think we did have some performance issues, and those were more not about the back end, but more about how we were handling the icons, because there's a lot of downloading going on. So this was back in 3.5 with the developer team in Atlassian. And if you know Jonathan Nolan, he is all over that performance stuff and was really busting me in the mouth a few times to make sure that we got all that sort of thing sorted out. So right now, we're combined into one icon image that gets, the sprite strategy, so that gets downloaded quickly. And we've run tests against it. So, of course, the DAC site is running it, and they're not having any performance issues. We have other large Fortune 500 customers who are using it for like 7,000 users. They're not having issues. It does take a little bit longer to render pages because we're doing more. We're rendering menus, we're rendering multiple sections, and that sort of thing. But it's the kinds of performance hits we're seeing are on an individual page load is on the 10 to 20% order of magnitude, and it depends. The really super complicated pages, of course, take longer. The really simple ones take pretty close to the same amount of time. So.
And have you tried the same with HTTPS, or would you say for a public-facing website it should be HTTP for performance reasons? Is the connection still there? No. Probably not.
Darryl? Hi, are you still there?
Hello?
Oh, yeah. There was a connection issue somehow. Do you understand me? No.
Hello?
Hi. Do you understand us?
I can hear you, yes. And I think I heard the question.
Okay.
We haven't noticed anybody reporting a difference between the HTTPS and HTTP sites.
Okay.
Although I think most of the large public ones, or the public ones, are HTTP.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that we have a lot. I mean, we do have some people using cloud-based services, but they tend to be smaller teams of maybe 100 or 200 people that are using secure login for stuff that's behind. They want to keep it secret.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. We haven't actually had anybody report a concern with that or even ask the question. So maybe we should do some testing. You may know something I don't.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Is it possible to export it to PDF, the pages, or does it look like?
The PDF exporter in Zen looks like this. It's the stock Confluence exporter. We've been working with the Scroll Wiki guys, if you're familiar with their PDF exporter.
Sure.
And the goal is, we haven't got there quite yet, but the goal is to take our branding, colors, and designs and to feed it into their PDF tool, because they have such a great set of export capabilities. We don't want to try to redo that stuff. We just want to make sure we leverage what they're doing already.
Good. So, no questions anymore? Then thanks again, Darryl, for your time.
Thanks for your attention, guys.
And hopefully we see you again sometime in Germany somewhere.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.